So on today's podcast, I have an incredibly special guest to me. So I met the amazing Penny Croal some 27 years ago, I think, Penny. Is it that long ago? And we worked together for 2 years when I had a part-time Saturday job in an estate agent. And we lost contact when I left. And I found her again about 8 years ago on Facebook and started following you. I don't know if you know this, through a mutual friend. And 4 years ago, I did a post that was very sad to me, that my marriage had ended. And Penny saw it and contacted me after years and years and years and wrote the most beautiful message. And she said, I know our friendship was a long time ago. It was very short, but I remember it with such joy and such fun. And it made me cry on that day. Oh, I'm welling up now, Penny. And and then she said, I have a course coming up and I think it would benefit you and I'd like you to come, send me your email. So I did. And I looked at the course and I kind of thought, oh my God, have I got any money? I don't know what I'm doing. And then just as I thought that, Penny sent me a message and said, by the way, it's a gift. And when the universe gives you a gift, you take it. And I can't tell you what tremendous gratitude I have for you for that moment in time, Penny. And I went along, and I'd been on a self-healing journey for about 5 years at that time. And I started my journey from a near-death medical procedure through diet and nutrition and adaptogens and all of that stuff. And I hadn't heard of energy work in any shape or form. And Penny had invited me to an EFT matrix re-imprint course. I'd never heard of it. And I turned up on the first day, very nervous. And there was a room full of people and they were all tapping. And most of you know that follow my podcast, I'm a mad tapper now. Looks as mad as shit, but it is brilliant. I say that every time. But I sat there and just thought, what the fuck are they doing? I mean, I didn't get it. And I remember going through my head thinking, I can't leave. It's a gift. That would be really rude. So I'll phone in sick tomorrow. Oh, wow, this is crazy. And I just watched everybody and they're really enjoying it. And then I remember it was 11 o'clock on the dot. And I don't know if you remember this, Penny, I let out a God almighty scream and I fell on the floor. And I felt like I was being stabbed in the hip. The pain was excruciating. And Penny, I said, I've got to go. I think I need an ambulance. I can't drive. I need to go. I'm in agony. And Penny just gently picked me up and she put me on the chair and she started tapping on me. And everybody was tapping in the room around us for about an hour and a half. And I could feel the pain shifting around my body and bringing the SUDS levels down, which Penny will tell you about. And at the end of it, Penny just hit a slide on her screen and said, and that, ladies and gentlemen, was a perfect example of chasing the pain. And I just remember going, what the fuck? That was fucking extraordinary. And that was all I said for 3 days of the course, wasn't it, Penny?
Yes. Yes, I do remember you just saying, how extraordinary. It was the catch phrase of that workshop.
So without further ado, I want to welcome the amazing Penny Croal. She is a multidisciplined practitioner. She is an EFT coach, trainer, matrix re-imprint practitioner, grandmaster, NLP, I always get that wrong, NLP, and her baby is meta consciousness, which we will get to later on in the podcast. So Penny, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, it's such an honor to be here. I'm so excited because how can you not be excited to be chatting with you, Philly? It's just so exciting.
Oh, bless you. So without further ado, can you please tell us about your very, very extraordinary journey and story?
Yes, well, a little bit like you, I was a bit skeptical of what people call woo-woo or energy or works, but I didn't think I had a traumatic childhood. It was quite normal. by the time I was in my mid-30s, I was diagnosed with bipolar, but then it was called manic depressive. I was suicidal. I attempted suicide several times, failed. So that was another failure, another burden, another. And I remember saying to myself, look, girl, if you cannot do this, make a decision. If you cannot leave this world, what are you going to do? And I'd already trained in Reiki and was already dabbling in crystals. Unfortunately, I do neither anymore. I do have lots of crystals, as you know, because I love the energy.
Loads of crystals.
And I still go for Reiki healings from my colleagues and friends and other people. But I don't, I'm not that vessel anymore. And this took me on a further journey of looking introspectively of, because I kept on changing career, and Einstein's brilliant quote of, if you keep on doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome, that's a sign of madness. Well, quite frankly, I was mad, and I'd been diagnosed as being mad. And there was a lot of shame around that mental expression, my behavior. And so I started studying NLP, and it was excruciating because
Can you just explain to our audience, for those that don't know, what NLP
yeah,
is, my
I do
lovely, please?
apologize.
No, no, no. It's just
We
there are
love
lots of
acronyms,
new
don't we?
people. We
We
do.
do love an acronym. So NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming, and it's basically excelling or modeling the behaviors of exquisite life. That's how I would like to explain it. So it makes us aware of our behaviors, our mind, and how we actually think and who we actually are and how we go about a daily life. So that was NLP. And Bandler and Grinder, who came up with this, basically looked at all the therapies and took the best bits out of all the therapists and put them together and called it neurolinguistic programming. That's it, basically.
Okay, thank you.
And Anthony Robbins is exquisite, but he's not allowed to call it NLP. He's come up with his own format. So if you haven't heard of Anthony Robbins, you'll be interviewing him next, Philly. I really, truly
I hope so. And everybody, all these links will be in the show notes, so you can look up all the amazing people that Penny is talking about.
And so I started studying this, and I was still going through this. If anybody has been through the bipolar manic depressive, it's like a little roller coaster, and there is a spectrum. There is a spectrum of all diseases, of all mental health, all these behaviors. There's a spectrum. And the great thing for me was when I was in mania, I could do anything. But what goes up needs to come down. And that's the horrific bit. And that, interestingly, the suicidal bit is when it's a healing peak. So when we have that energy, so it's pushing us back into the mania, because if we don't have that mania, we cannot get out of bed enough to commit suicide. So this is what I invite people to become aware of. If you have friends or family, to look for that sudden urge, or that if people are depressed and then they go, oh, we're feeling happy, because that happiness, that surge of mania is when most likely people will commit suicide, when they have.
That's very interesting. And I think after the last 2.5 years, we've seen depression, bipolar going through the roof. That is a really useful piece of information. Thank you, Penny.
Yeah, so be aware of that.
And that's when friends and family need to take action.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As a therapist or a practitioner, I have a confidentiality, so I can't speak about my clients or share their information. However, I always ask them at which stage of that suicidal part they're at. And people think, oh, let's not talk about it because it could push them into the suicide. No, people need to be acknowledged and heard. And if you think, or that person is saying, yes, I have a plan, then contact their GP or the police or authority or someone 911. So this is quite important. So
Yeah, there's a very great line from Louisa Hay, who says you can't clean your house unless you can see the dirt.
yeah,
And, a lot of people just think it's, better to ignore the dirt, but it just gets dirtier.
yeah. And of course, a lot of the depression comes from feeling a burden, being in the way, nobody listening or acknowledging you, or so people don't want to talk about it because there's the cloak of shame. Now, I wasn't going to go down this route, but I think it's a very important part. So going back to my story, I was working for a very good friend, a brother from another mother, and he ordered me off his land. That old adage, get off my land. And the next day I woke up and I had Bell's palsy. And it was quite amusing because I did go to the mirror and try to squish it back up. And again, more shame because I was drooling, and I had a trapped nerve in my left shoulder and a broken foot. So I was walking around like this. And
Yeah.
business partner had taken away all my money, left me with $750,000 in debt. And
it was a bad time.
Yeah, it was a little challenging, to say the least. And I'm not dismissing this because I've worked on this so much. But I found a credit card, being a London girl. I know I'm Scottish, but I class myself as a London girl. Found a credit card, went off to Thailand to fast because that was my last resort. And in this beautiful fasting resort, a lady went for a massage and she offered me EFT, and my face basically went back to how it is now. And honestly, at that point though, Philly, I thought I would have danced naked around a fireplace at this point, because this roller coaster, the face,
Terrible.
I was quite, playing my little violin quite loudly to myself. And that's where I discovered EFT. And that was my journey. And then met Carl Dawson, the creator of Matrix Reimprinting, became a trainer. At one point, looked at him and thought, because I didn't know what to do with my life, I wasn't going to do what I was doing. And I thought I could do what he's doing. That brought on another set of illnesses, which then guided me into the meta, which stems from New German medicine and the difference between germ theory and embryology.
Yes, and we're going to get to that. But first of all, for those people that haven't listened to my podcast on EFT, can you give us a very brief description of emotional freedom technique?
Yes, so it's simply the cousin of acupuncture, where we have energy, can't even speak now, energy lines throughout our body. Some people can call them the nervous system, and where you would put a needle in, but we don't have to learn the 365 points of the acupuncture points. We only use a few, and we simply tap on ourselves to clear these energy lines, because emotions are so important. And we're very British, and that British suppressing, a stiff upper lip, have a cup of tea, is ingrained across many cultures, that it's not safe to express our emotions. So we get trapped because we're such domesticated, aren't we? We are such domesticated.
We are. And I remember you saying to me on that first course, the British have only had emotions for the last 50 years. They didn't exist before that.
Yeah. And so this is interesting about the emotions, and I'm maybe jumping ahead, Philly, but we were just talking about the O word before we started this. And
for those of you who don't know what we're talking about the orgasm word, because Penny obviously saw the clip with Dr. John Gray on the female orgasm. And as my mentor and my coach, I kind of said to her, Penny, is it okay for me to play with my clit? And she went, oh my God, I have so much to say. So should we just dive in and get that done?
Yeah, I think so. Because First of all, there's a balance, isn't there? And I have gone through personally, and I don't know about you, Philly, an almost nymphomania time of my life, that I went out and just needed to have sex with anybody.
Yes, I had that in my teenage 20 years, yes.
And interestingly, from my meta-consciousness and stemming from New German medicine, New German medicine was created by Dr. Hammer, who was I was going to say a biological doctor. He was a proper doctor, a medical doctor who got ousted because of his work. And he discovered that when we're growing as an embryo in the womb, that each part of our bodies are connected to layers of brain. Now, it's not as simple as that, but I'll make it simple because our brain is not like Lego. Yeah. It would be so fantastic if it was, wouldn't it? We could just go unpack that. We'll put that back together. So this is where I'm coming from, the embryological, the way of looking at how we've evolved and we can adapt. And we're basically an animal. Now, many animals have clitoris. Interestingly,
I wasn't aware of that. I mean,
yes.
You don't see animals when they're having sex, female animals orgasming. Do you? I don't.
Well, the jury's out on this, but I'm quite fascinated. So snakes have 2 clitoris.
Wow.
There is a sort of a myth that dolphins and horses are more connected to us, but because they have a large cortex, but all mammals have cortexes. And this is the part of the brain that's about awareness, sensuality, connectedness, touch. But do we know if they have orgasms? We don't really. There's not, it escapes me. What's that famous sex clinic in America? I've forgotten it.
I can't remember.
Sorry, people, I will look it up afterwards. But the research I've done, I think, is that the reason we've had orgasms, because a lot of animals have this kind of orgasm. I don't know if it's the same as ours, but I then don't know if my orgasm is the same as yours, Philly.
No, it's the same, actually. There's again, I learned on one of your courses about an African tribe where the color green isn't in their dictionary because they only see blue.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm looking and saying you're wearing a white top and you're thinking you're wearing a red top, but you've just called it. We just don't know this.
Yes. So I don't know what you're experiencing. I only know what I'm experiencing.
So just for those of you that saw Dr. John Gray's podcast, which caused quite a lot of outcry, does it matter if the orgasm is tutorial and stimulated by yourself or a vibrator? As a woman, so tell me what you think here, and a practitioner.
I can understand why he would think that if women were simply using a vibrator and not having sex with a partner, whether male, female, non-binary, whatever, that they would retain water and put weight on. Now, let's think about that, because that is key. There's part of our kidneys, because he was talking about the kidney meridian. That's not the way our meridians work. If we massage our meridians, it doesn't, the kidney meridian, if we stimulate it and there's no acupressure points on our clitoris, builds up heat. So we have to be aware of where the heat is. However, the kidney meridian is inside the kidneys is kidney collecting tubules. So when we're feeling depressed, when we're feeling alone, rejected, and we are simply masturbating ourselves on our own in that depression state, in that lonely state, feeling alone, then we could possibly retain water. But we're going to be retaining water anyway if we're feeling depressed, alone, rejected, because this is all about survival. Think of a little starfish out of water. You pick it up from the stand and everybody goes, oh, look at the pretty pattern. The starfish is not making that pretty pattern for us. It's sucking the water out because it's feeling, oh my God, I'm not going to survive. This is an unconscious process that our body will hold on to water because we need water or we will die. So when we're feeling alone, rejected, ousted, we'll hold on to water. Does that make sense?
That's very interesting. Yeah, very, very interesting, Penny. Thank you.
And so does it make any difference for me? And I'm going to be share a personal, I love occasionally masturbating. I don't have the time to do it all the time. And I use a little machine from, am I allowed to say where it's made?
Yeah.
So I love Lelo, L-E-L-O. They're hypoallergenic. They're beautiful. You can leave them lying around and nobody will know what they are. They're not.
I have to say here that most of my audience know that I have locked vag and I had a spinal fusion and they cut my nervous system off, and that you help rebuild my nervous system with me. And one of the things Penny asked me to do, and I remember a therapy session with you, and you brought up the Lelo dildo and said, okay, we're ordering this now. You're not leaving this session unless we've ordered this, because you need some help and we need to get your nervous system working again.
Yeah.
Thank you, darling.
Because if you think about it, during the Victorian times, women were so suppressed that they were going to doctors, and doctors found that if they actually brought a woman to orgasm, they would have release. So the doctors were getting tired, and there's a gentleman, my memory is appalling, so I apologize everybody, but a gentleman doctor came up with a vibrator so that doctors
in Victorian times,
they came up and designed a vibrator so that women, and it would be middle class to high class women that were going to see these doctors that could only afford them, so they didn't have to masturbate or make the woman have an orgasm, because they found out that was the quickest way to release their anxiety, their suppression, their and in those days, when even Hippocrates said about our uterus that
he did. He knew quite a lot, that man.
Our uterus was all the diseases from women were down to the uterus. Well, we've evolved a bit, but our uterus is getting blamed for a lot. Our vagina is getting blamed for a lot. Now our clitoris is getting blamed for a lot. So if we've had trauma and we cannot find a man, which I love that he said, just go to find a man. That is possibly just finding a man off the street without that heart connection, without that looking at our values. Are we, I've done this in the past. I've met somebody and gone, yeah, normally I date them for 3 years and go, why the hell did I start dating them? Well, because I slept with them on the first night and then we just fell into a relationship. But this is about a heart connection. The kidney meridian is also connected to our heart, and our thymus, which medical doctors think stops. But our thymus, to thump that thymus, this is all connected. So just to fuck a man is not going to be any better. And personally, I would use a vibrator.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Gray was actually saying that the healing peak part of it was very much to do with making love, having that connection, that internal, the G spots, the other internal spots. But, we don't all have that luxury.
Yeah. And
It's
yes, to bring that connected is beautiful. And if we can do that, but using a vibrator is not going to be negative to us unless we're in that nymphomania, which, if you think of the etymology, the meaning of the word nymphomania, it comes from the what does it come from now, Penny? Let's get this straight before you just it comes from the mortality. It's a depression. So this actually ties in with my bipolar. And I'm not saying that everybody's bipolar goes into nymphomaniac, but there is that state when we're coming out of the post mortality that we go into that higher sex drive. And there is a spectrum on everything. So the ebb and flow of our libido will be going in with our emotional conflicts. And vibrators are beautiful because so many women don't even know their own bodies. And a vibrator is a great way of exploring and becoming confident and knowing what you like.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm quite astonished the more women I talk to. I mean, I said to 3 people recently, I've asked them about their level of orgasm, and they all said, I'm not actually sure if I've had an orgasm. I'm going, when you have one, you'd know.
So yeah, this is really interesting because again, there are that spectrum of orgasms. So some people can have a little tingling and that's an orgasm, but they might just overlook it because it's just a little tingling. It could just be in their perineum. Between the perineum is between your vagina and your anal, and this is why men like that to be touched. That can be a little fluffer for so many of us. So some women can feel that. They can feel just a little contraction. They don't know that's an orgasm. But until we've cleared our wounds from, and I have to go back to my bipolar because Dr. Hammer himself called these behaviorals, these mental expressions, constellations. Sounds lovely, doesn't it?
It does.
Basically, if I were to get a CT scan, which I have, and you look at my brain, you will see little stars like the sky. And whereas cancer, for example, may just have one conflict on these CT scans, and you can see it on the brain because that's the beauty of CT scans. Mental expressions, behaviors will be seen as you have to have one on either side of the brain. So there'll be 2 conflicts going. And
right, okay.
With my bipolar, I didn't find this out for a long time until I started my healing journey. But there was 2 conflicts of sexual conflicts, and sexual conflicts can be a rejection sexually. They could be molestation, perceived or actual, rape, perceived or actual. So even to see another person go through this, or even witness it on TV in a movie.
Yep.
I'm on some kind of spiritual dating on Facebook, and I might have come off it because I got a little bit people saying, well, you can't be spiritual if you eat meat. Well, I've lived in an ashram with people that are very spiritual, more spiritual and they eat meat. Maybe it's still a cognitive dissonance. People say to me, well, would you eat your cat? No, but I wouldn't eat my cat. But in our culture, we don't eat dogs and cats, but in another culture, they do.
Absolutely. And also, I think the difference there, and again, I've told this story, this story about my pet pig, Snowy, because we've had to visit Snowy quite a few times. And when I was 6, my mum caught Snowy on the sofa watching Blue Peter with me. And she said, if you ever do that again, Snowy's going to the slaughterhouse. And I thought she was kidding, and she wasn't. And 2 months later, roast Snowy got served. And so I think the difference very much for me is whether you name those pets. I think so my sister grew farmed all her own meat. And when she had her 2 pigs, and they had got absolutely huge, and my children were quite small, and we went to see Auntie Trish, and she took them straight to the pigs, and they're massive, and they're rolling in this mud, and they're having an absolute ball. And my girls were so excited and said, "What are their names?" And Trish just said, "I think it's better not to name them."
Yeah.
So, all of these things, we wouldn't eat cats and dogs because we name them. But, there are cultures that do. And I do wonder, and this is maybe going a little bit far, I know that my plants, my vegetables, when I talk to them, grow more.
Yeah.
We've seen the science on this. IKEA did the big study. There's garlic is called nature's antibiotic. But I've seen studies that people that talk to their garlic as they grow it, it gives you even more benefits. So when is it going to be called murder that we're killing plants? And then, there's been this big swing at the moment to eating insects. It's still life.
Yes.
So
About the insect, I haven't seen that. But Bruce Lipton, who is a biologist who used to work on stem cells and then realized he was teaching dogma, and now teaches about the environment and our cells, and has written a beautiful book, Biology.
that's Biology of Beliefs. Fantastic. If you don't know his works, please go and look them up. Brilliant, brilliant.
And this is all about the goldfish bowl that Philly was talking about. His old partner was doing studies with the what do you call it when you go into court in America? They test you. What's that called? So they the truth or dare. They put the machine.
Oh, the lie detector.
Yes, the lie detector. So he was doing studies.
Yes, I've seen these
with humans, and he was teaching this at a university in Canada. And then one night he sat down after work, and he was feeling a little bit despondent. His work wasn't giving him the joy, and he was a bit, bit bored. Sat up, lit a cigarette, and he was looking at his plants. And he thought, I wonder let's look at it. What would the plant would do. So he put the lie detector, clipped it on the plant, lit a cigarette up, and thought, I'm going to actually burn you. And the lie detector went, he went, I'm not.
I know everything is connected, and I say this time and time again. And you can look at the works of Dr. Emoto, some of which I have in my book, The Natural Wellness Journal, because he did extraordinary work, with essential oils, music, meditation, on water, freezing it, looking at under a microscope. Everything is connected. Everything is energy, and as we go forward into this new era of mankind, because we have got a rebuild to do from what has happened in the last 2.5 years. And we're seeing an economic model going on here. So one final note, Penny Croal, the wonderful Penny Croal. What can you say to give everybody hope as we go forward into this? The next 2 years are going to be challenging. So what hope can you give us?
I would invite everyone to, rather than just release and let go, this is an old paradigm, is to stand back and see what triggers you, and put yourself in other people's shoes, and perhaps start saying and rather than either or. And there will be people who are more wounded, and it's their choice, and people will be triggered at you, and you cannot stop people being triggered at you. People may be triggered by my Scottish accent, or the fact that I've got very badly haircut at the moment. That's theirs. So just live for you, and it's not selfishness. Let's look at it as self-fullness. It's not kicking people out. It's being kind, because if you're kind, That's the most precious thing in the world.
Absolutely. The last quote in my book, I quoted Caroline Black before she died, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. Penny Croal, please, just before you go, can you tell the audience where they can find you?
So www. Do you still say that? Changeahead.
Yep.
I'm so old fashioned. I'm 57, so that's what we used to say. HTTP. What was that about? And I still do it, so I apologize. Changeahead.biz and International Meta Consciousness Academy. It's long, but it's all linked into the Change Ahead. Thank you.
Brilliant. And there's one last thing I'd like to say to the audience, then we'll put Penny's webpage in the show notes. But I was very privileged to do a tapping course with you earlier this year called Is Food Friend or Foe? And it's still up on your webpage. And if people are struggling with food issues, because everything is emotional eating, they can go to Penny's webpage and they can still sign up for that, can't they, Penny?
It's free for life. There's 21 days. It is not a challenge, as you know.
Sorry. Yeah, I know.
I'm a little projector in the human design. That's a whole other conversation. So it's a journey of 21 days. So you can dip in and dip out. And there's just beautiful, excellent, amazing specialists on there, like Philly and psychologists, and to take you through and make life easier. For me, find the ease in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Penny Croal, for today, thank you so much for coming on The Wellness Way.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Philly. It's just been an utter joy.
Thank you.